Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gregg, and I'm a company valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. I have the privilege today of discussing strategic planning and how to sell a business today with Jennifer Smith, a business broker in Cape Girardeau, Missouri with Murphy Business. So let's get into it because I know a lot of business owners have questions of what creates a higher value in the business sale process when they're thinking about exiting or selling their business.
Yeah, that's a really great question because who doesn't want a higher value when they go to sell, right?
Right.
So, there's a couple of things that you really need to hone in on, especially if a business has an owner-operator involved and it's not a business that is investor-led with a management team in place. So, assuming that you're an owner-operator type of a business where you're still engaged, you really want to make sure that the business is not too dependent upon you as the owner. If you're the linchpin, a buyer's going to have a really hard time seeing themselves in your shoes and finding a way to replace you and all of your industry expertise and institutional knowledge. Another thing that's really helpful is recurring revenue. Buyers like really stable revenue. They like stable earnings. They like predictability. So if you have recurring revenue in place, that's going to make it more sellable than a business that has a lot of fluctuation in revenue and earnings. Assignable client contracts are really helpful. Notice I said assignable. If a contract is dependent upon your specific company and it cannot be assigned to a buyer, we're probably looking at more toward a stock sale. That's definitely not going to be helpful and is going to put a little bit of pressure on your purchase price. So you want to make sure that those contracts are all assignable so that in a sale, you can assign those to the buyer. You want to make sure your industry has a good outlook. Sometimes you can't control that, but sometimes you can position a company several years in advance to make sure that you're taking advantage of some of the cutting edge things in your industry and that you're not behind the curve or outdated. And then finally, something that I want to make sure and talk about is there are two types of businesses that I typically deal with. One called Main Street businesses. Those are under, say, call it 3 to 5 million. And then middle market companies that are, call it 5 million to 50 or $100 million. Much, much bigger.
In revenue, right?
In revenue.
Yes.
In a Main Street type business, you want to make sure that your earnings are sufficient to service the debt for the buyer and put food on the table, because that's typically going to be an owner-operator type of a business. If it can't do those two things, it's probably not going to sell. Your earnings just aren't high enough. If it's a middle market type of a company or a lower middle market type of a company, you just want to make sure you have a sufficient ROI to attract the buyer base that you're looking for, because you're probably looking at private equity, family offices, things like that, and they really are looking at that return on investment. And if it's just not there, it's really not going to sell for what you're looking for. So those are just a couple things, Melissa, that might be helpful in terms of what makes a business more sellable or ways to get more value.